Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gimenez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I want to echo the thoughts of some of my colleagues that Mr. Katko, I know he's gone, but certainly a great ranking member, and the way that this committee has conducted its business in a bipartisan manner, that's to be commended. Mr. Wray, I read in your testimony you consider domestic violent extremists to be the greatest threat to our health and well-being here in the United States. Do you stand by that?
Well, let me just make a slightly finer point on it, because precision is important here. The greatest threat to us in the Homeland is lone actors in small cells, typically radicalized online, using easily accessible weapons against soft targets. That group includes two categories, both domestic violent extremists and homegrown violent extremists, which are foreign terrorist inspired. So they're very similar, but it's two big buckets.
Do you know how many fatalities we had in 2020 from DVEs?
I don't have the number of deaths off the top of my head, but I know that in 2020, the most lethal attacks, or the lethal attacks that we had, came from what we categorize as anti-government, anti-authority violent extremism, which includes both anarchist violent extremism as well as militia violence.
Yeah, I think I read there was something like 4, and four is too many. That's for the 4 people that died. Do you know how many people die per day from fentanyl overdose?
I don't have that figure.
Would it shock you to say that over 200 die daily from fentanyl overdoses?
I know the numbers are eye-popping.
Eye-popping. Who controls that trade? Who is pouring in this deadly drug into the United States?
Transnational criminal organizations, especially the cartels.
Which ones? From where?
Typically from Mexico.
Would you consider that to be a terrorist act?
Well, I certainly consider it to be a major law enforcement threat and a major security threat. Whether I would call it a national security threat gets into sort of terminology, but certainly it is a major threat to the homeland of almost epidemic proportions.
So an organization that's killing over 200 Americans every single day, you have difficulty in saying that they're not terrorizing us?
Well, again, in my world, terrorism has a very specific legal definition. It is certainly a national security threat.
So what are we doing about it? So we know we have organizations across the border, and they're not some faraway land. They're right across the border. They're killing tens of thousands of Americans every year. What exactly are we doing about that?
Well, as to true border security, obviously I would defer to Secretary Mayorkas, but on our end, to deal with the transnational criminal organizations, there are a number of things we're doing. First, we have transnational organized crime task forces with not just agents, but lots and lots of state and local law enforcement officers who work with us to go after the cartels. Second, we have safe streets task forces, which deal with a related part, which is the violent gangs that work with those cartels and going after those. Third, we have border liaison officers in all of the field offices that we have that are on the border, and I've visited all of them myself and walked around not just with our people, but with the CBP officers, and those folks ensure cross-border assistance. We have LEGATs, which is legal attaché offices in Mexico, and in fact, last year, we were able to apprehend 2 of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives, which is progress. So those are some of the things we're doing, but it is a major concern for sure.
Have we done anything with the government of Mexico, warned them, et cetera, that they need to step up their war against these cartels? Because again, these cartels are killing tens of thousands of Americans. A foreign group in 2000 killed about 3,000 Americans, and we responded by waging war for about 20 years, halfway around the world. There are foreign groups right now across the border that are killing tens of thousands of Americans every single year, and we don't seem to be doing much about it. And frankly, I'm upset about that. We seem to be focused on domestic violent extremists, which we should, okay, but we're not, which killed 4 people in 2020, and we seem to be turning a blind eye to organizations that are killing tens of thousands of Americans. And we also seem to be doing not much about stopping the flow of this drug coming into the United States through our southern border. Thank you. My time is up, and I yield back.